Jaden Ramsey and Matthew Green, friends from the Timeless Wisdom program. Matthew's been an ongoing collaborator and co-creator of these really pertinent dialogues. And it's following his intuition that I was connected with Jaden here in Berlin. And Jaden is a writer who's going to be sharing with us about a really pertinent theme in his personal exploration, which has profound implications for our collectivity. And so I want to welcome Jaden, welcome Matthew again, and invite you, Jaden, to speak a little bit about this writing project that you've been going on, and then perhaps afterwards, Matthew, you know, what's inspired you about this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I feel honored and humbled to be here. So I'm currently writing a book, my first book, and the topic is around my father. My biological father has been absent from my life, and through this process of our timeless wisdom training, really going into our ancestral and collective trauma, individual and collective trauma. Like, I've been able to, I guess, walk through doors I haven't before in my life, and realize there's many things in me that I would like to express to my father, that I feel like in doing so I can connect with him and also let go of some things that I've been carrying my whole life. And so this was like an impulse through the process of our training to just start writing letters to him. And so far the book is essentially letters to my father, just expressing things to him, expressing emotions, sharing with him about my life. And what has been the beauty in it is I feel like his absence in a way like also impacted and created me somehow, and so I'm connecting with the how him not being there also has influenced me and created many things in my life, situations in my life that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And so it's kind of like a reclamation of my story and my belonging in a way, through these letters. And it's just been really touching and also a really difficult process to kind of muster up the strength to engage in kind of a dialogue with him inside internally. So that's what it's about so far.
Yeah, thank you, Jaden. I'm just before I invite Matthew, it's just come for me that it wasn't more than a few weeks ago I was at a 5 rhythms class, which ended with a lot of long conversations sitting on the floor, and I was speaking to this German man who had spent most of his adult life unaware of this block in relation to the absence of his father, and he kind of described it as being like under a rock and, you know, doing everything until his 40s or 50s to kind of keep that thing buried under there. And so it's something we can get into a little further here, is just how profoundly this impacts the life of a man and perhaps woman as well, and how much it shapes all of our interaction and movement through the world. So really honored to have you here, Jaden, and very special for you to be reaching this place at the age that you are, and not 3 decades later, you know.
When you were speaking, Jaden, I had there were a lot of things you said that I wanted to hear you speak more about. But the thing that's coming to me now is the question of what you were carrying. You talked about what the absence of your father had left you carrying. I wonder if you could take us inside that.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, well, first of all, there's a lots of confusion around that, like, and I think the confusion led to like a self, um, like hyper self analyzing me and what I'm doing in my life and how it's maybe, um, yeah, how it's my fault that things happen, or and so I think it was the first layer of it was working with the confusion on like why my father would not be in my life, like that just for a young person that just doesn't make any sense. Um and then what comes up from there, surfaces from there, is kind of like this shame or guilt that I feel for this situation. And um yeah, and then that how that has impact a lot of my relationships, um feeling not worthy, feeling that I need to do more to receive love, to yeah, be seen in life, basically. And so I think this was like the first layer that I touched, and then um, I start to feel this, which feels like an older or maybe more mature uh, response or rebellion in me, of like this anger of really kind of pushing back against the energy of my father and being like, why weren't you there? Like just this rebellious energy. And so that was kind of like a next layer that came up. Um, and I think beneath all of that, there's just this like longing and deep sadness of wanting to be supported by the man who created me, and to really feel that, but then be able to like um, kind of integrate it into my experience, like to walk with that, but not necessarily be like taken over by this like longing to be connected with my father, and then have that kind of be projected into my relationships. And yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
Yeah, it's very powerful for me to hear that those words, supported by the man that created me. And I am a father. I have a 5-year-old, actually almost 6-year-old daughter. And I I do know, I had a I have a obviously relationship with my own father, but I know that in my own personal journey, there's a lot around the question of what it means to be a father that is really huge, but feels very unknown. And I notice that we don't have, certainly in our culture, we don't have much conversation around what it means to be a father, actually. And so this is touching layers in me to hear this, which are actually also quite tender, but in a very different way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling a sense of, I'm feeling a real sense of how our fathers live within us, and the degree of intimacy to that is not, um, they don't exist outside of us. I think as sons, our fathers, or the absence of our fathers, it lives kind of almost, it's closer than our skin. It's like that. It's like right there. And so when there's a when there's an unknowing of the father, or an absence of the father, then that too is it's here. I imagine it's like a kind of like a mystery or a shadow that's just like right there, like next to you. Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it's interesting because maybe up until 4 or 5 years ago in my life, I felt that it didn't affect me so much. Like, and I guess that's the absence, like, or the numbness of the father not being there. And um, yeah, in the last years, I've really been able to like kind of feel the absence inside myself, like you're saying, Jacob, and what then brings, what emotions come up when I then start to feel not held in a way, or the numbness there. Um, so yeah, this is definitely like, it's exactly what you're saying, and so beautiful that you point to that, because that's like my writing process is I'm really um, kind of tuning into uh, yeah, this spot in myself, and then what surfaces, and then through that, whatever I would like to express, or however I would like to maybe hold this process in myself, and then and kind of writing that to my father, as if, to reveal to him these layers that are living within me, and also must be living within him, as maybe he also experienced absence from his father. And so it also feels like this kind of through the lineage, touching on this uh, not being seen in a way by the father, and um, how to reclaim our stance as men. Um, yeah.
What's coming to me is one of the frames that we work with in our timeless wisdom training. Very often, these three levels of being, belonging, and becoming, and thinking about how the father is so essential to all those three levels, to obviously to the being, the belonging to a family, to a culture, to a community of men, you could say as well, and the becoming. Like, I think, and there's so much around the role and relationship we have with our fathers that shapes who we become, or can become, or want to become, or feel driven to become. And so those, it's to echo in a way Jacob's observation that this is so fundamental, and also that, Jaden, for you to be approaching this at the time, the phase in your life you are, it's such a huge step. And I found myself wondering, like, do you ever write letters in the book that you then rip up almost? Like, where do you know what's like you? I wonder about your process. Then I wonder if there are times when you're saying, "Can I really say this? Like, is this too much, or will he be able to receive this?" Because it's very different from writing a book about a topic, or about something, or writing a autobiography that's already happened. It's actually writing from your experience in a very vulnerable way. And I'm curious about how that lives in you in terms of the creative process.
Yeah. Yeah, when you asked me that, one of the letters I wrote kind of comes to mind, and it's this time that so I grew up in California, like for the first 7 years of my life in the US, in Southern California. And me and my mother, we lived in kind of a condo, but it had like a detached garage, and she turned that into my like play area. So I think I was like 4 at the time, and I had like all my toys and skateboards and all that stuff in there. And I had this memory come through while I was like, in the process of writing, or maybe it was a dream or something. And I remember this moment where my mom was dating some guy, and they were gonna go on a date or go somewhere. And my mom told me, your dad's gonna come see you. He's in LA. My dad was living somewhere else at the time. He's in LA. He'll come to see you, pick you up, and hang out for the day while me and this guy would kind of go enjoy ourselves. And so I was there playing in the garage, and I don't know if I remember if this is just something that I created as a memory, but like I just remember this moment of like preparing to see my father, and this would have been maybe the first or maybe second time that I would have seen him. So I didn't even really know what that means to like meet my father and go enjoy some time with him. But I remember playing in the garage and having this excitement because it felt interesting, and yeah, and just playing throughout the day. Some hours pass, and time as a kid feels quite long, so I don't know how long it was, but time passed and never showed up, and so as I'm writing, I think like more information comes is why I'm sharing this, because like this just kind of came through the process of sticking with this project in some way, and more information comes as I go. And there's stuff stored kind of as memories in my body, or yeah, I even got like a material manifestation of new information coming, as my mom, when I told her that I was writing this book, she was like, oh wow, I have a whole box of letters and paperwork and court stuff uh, from around the time that I was trying to like find your dad and like get him to be a part of your life. And I wanted to keep that for you so that you knew that I was making attempt to have your father be a part of your life. Um, and so she sent me this whole packet of stuff to Germany that included stuff like, tracking him down for paying child support, because he had avoided that for, I don't know, the first many years of my life and owed my mom quite a bit of money. And she hired like private investigators to find him. This was at the time before like Facebook, and she needed to like hire people to kind of find him. And in that she wrote like letters to him, that they found an address for him, and she wrote letters to kind of ask him like, what is he doing, why isn't he in my life, and send pictures of me to my father. And those letters got returned to her, and she had these letters in that packet that she sent me. And so like I kind of light up saying this because in a way it felt like the letters that she wrote back then to my father that got returned to her because he had the wrong address, I got to open those letters. And I get goosebumps saying that. Like I was the one that got to open these letters and read my mom expressing herself to my father, asking him what he's doing, why he's not showing up for me, and like really pleading for him to be a part of my life, even if it doesn't work between them two. And like little pictures of myself. And it just like really touches me to feel how through this process of kind of opening these doors in myself, I got to learn and feel also my mom's process in this like um, whole whole situation, like the family dynamic, and to connect more with her. So yeah, I just those are some things that come up as I tune into like my writing process. It's just like it's coming kind of as a step by step, and new information arises, and I kind of just go with that and see where it leads me. And yeah, sometimes it's leading to things like that where letters are coming and stuff.
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, amazing story. Both of those stories are amazing and so powerful. And it feels like, dare I say, the book is writing itself through you almost. It's like orchestrating all these like years long threads that have lain dormant, almost waiting for this moment for you to weave them together and create something that will obviously be for your own process, but for so many other people as well. And I don't want to rush to the collective dimension of this, but I feel like that's also integral to your project, if I've heard you correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I just feel that this is a topic that's quite overlooked by our collective, just as far as even fathers not being emotionally present with their children, and having to fulfill some kind of role societally that says you have to go out, you have to earn for the family, and many fathers are gone or traveling or whatever, and even that, in that case where the distance is just an energetic or emotional distance, I think is a huge impact. And then we get to the actual physical distance of fathers, and you look at the statistics, and it's just crazy to see how many households are mother and children, and the father's out of the household for whatever reason. And yeah, I think this just has a huge impact that we don't see in our society, that the men are kind of not standing behind the kids, and how that leads to difficulties and later on in life as we grow into maturity. And yeah, so this is a huge part of also what, like, this is how I'm connecting it to the reader in a way, like, because we all have fathers, and maybe to some extent there's absence there. And I think to work or discuss this topic, have kind of a dialogue between I and the reader on how this may have impacted their life, is something that could be fruitful for people that read this book.
Yeah, it was a really beautiful further unfolding of the story there, Jaden. And I'm also thinking about Barack Obama's autobiography before he ran for president. Like, must be probably 15 years ago now or something. I think it was called Letters, something like Letters to My Father as well. So there's a way in which this theme is kind of deeply circling around in the culture, and coming back to the fore. And I'm really glad you drew in that kind of collective component. We were sharing a little bit about some of the statistics before this, and the numbers are astonishing. It's about 50%, I think, in African American families in the United States, single parent households. And I think what really strikes me about you and your transmission is how gentle it is, and how intimate it is, and the characteristic of men whose fathers are absent is often to go in the other direction. It's like that like kind of distance, that absence, that coldness becomes a distance from one's own gentle core, and then it becomes more aggressive, and it becomes more of a, like, I'm going to prove myself in other ways. And I think I'm big into rap culture and hip hop culture, and you can really see it like a very raw expression of what's coming off the street. And you just know that a lot of these guys do have multiple generations of the absence of fathers, and it turns into this kind of boys turned to men, but not really fully realized men. And violence and the irresponsibility and the need to prove oneself to one's peers, and all of that stuff comes out of that. So I'm quite interested in why your path is forked off very differently to that. And I know that alongside writing, you also practice body work, which is something many people perhaps don't really know about. It's something I've recently become very interested in. I think there's a great depth to it. So how does the body work, and how does that, like, how have you kind of forged this very different path?
Yeah, I'll answer that. But first, what I wanted to say too is why I think I may have a little bit more of the word that's coming to me is privilege, but I had a man come into my life. My mom married my stepfather, who I consider my father because he has just been with me and there for me and around when I was 7. And so I think I have had the privilege to have a father figure in my life that stands with me and has oriented me. And so I want to name that too, because like that is has brought me so much. And I think there's a lot of people that don't have that. Like you were saying, in rap and hip hop culture, you know, there's no role models for a lot of these young Black men, and that's just like devastating for how we grow up. And yeah, the levels of incarceration in the US for Black men is just, it's crazy. So I think for me, having a role model, having somebody step into the family, even if it was at that age, did impact me in a very positive way, and continues to, as I do have a deep connection with him still. And at the same time, that doesn't take away from, you know, those, just not having a connection to my biological father and the impacts of those first 7 years of not having that father figure as well. So I just wanted to say that because it really feels important to express that. Yeah, I do have a good father, and yeah, it doesn't always have to be the biological one as well. So yeah. And then as far as the body work, yeah, that's such a good question, and also unexpected. And I'm curious in myself about how these two kind of interweave in a way, like how body work informs my writing, and movement informs our writing, and how writing may inform my movement practice. And yeah, like I think there's something there, because when I move my body or when I'm touching a body, I feel that I get information somehow, and it rises to the surface, and I'm able to not only just kind of view it, but also like move it and work with it in a way. So there's like some agency in the way that, like when I'm touching a body or I'm moving my own body, that there's information that I have access to, and that I can also use my own intelligence to shape and move and recreate and help transform. And I guess in a sense, that's also what you're doing in the process of writing, is like there's things surfacing, and you're able to kind of ride those waves and then direct it in a way that you feel is right for you. And, you know, the words kind of come as you do that. And so I think these two things have something in common for me, at least. And yeah, body work has just helped me to be connected to the emergence, like the body. Somebody said this the other day, like the body coming first, and how that can be so fruitful in the way that we walk in the world. And because we're always moving, and emotions are always processing through the tissues. And yeah.
Wow, it's beautiful to hear you draw that analogy between the body work, which I didn't even realize you did body work, Jaden, until just now. But to hear that correspondence between the writing process, which I'm very familiar with in my professional life, and body work is completely new to me. I mean, there are other analogies people use, like music is commonly used with writing, and there are obviously a lot of there is a similar source. But I love the idea of bringing in the kind of sensuousness and the physicality of body work, and how that is a mirror to your writing process. I think that's such a rich and in some ways unique way of approaching writing. And I also wanted to share something that was coming up for me as Jacob was speaking, and speaking to this kind of we do kind of experience this very gentle energy from you. And having been with you in the Timeless Wisdom training space, I've also seen you, and I think it's okay for me to speak about this. It's obviously a confidential space, but we speak about our own experience outside the space. I've witnessed you embodying very different energies as well at times, in a way that has been very powerful for the entire group of 200 or more people. I don't know if you'd like to share more about any of those processes and how they may connect with your project and this question of the Father more broadly. But since Jacob hasn't been present for those moments, I felt I'd like to presence that those other energies that you've also been bringing to real powerful and immediate impact as well in the group space, I would add.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, to tap into this kind of anger and also this more fierce part of myself has been a huge process of in the TWT, our Timeless Wisdom training. And it's, I think, emerged through me being able to access the parts of my father's lineage and being able to access, like, what does it mean to be a Black male in this world, and how much pain that this body really does carry. And so a lot of the processes Matthew are referring to is just me kind of bringing that into the field to bring awareness around, like, there's a lot going on for Black people in general, but also just to be in a Black male body, experiencing so many things over the last hundreds of years of abuse and just basically oppression on the body. And I through my body work and movement practice, I feel so much in my body, and so I feel like I've been able to tap into the sensations that are living in me from these experiences, but also like the emotions of rage and anger. And I think having this gentleness that you guys are reflecting it enables me to, like, deliver these things in a way that maybe it could be more received. It's not pushing people away, but it's a very direct way to say, like, look, a Black experience in this world is not easy, and we really need to work on this as a collective to restore what has been broken for so many years. So yeah, I don't know if that speaks to kind of what you were trying to get me to share, but
it does, yeah. And to note, for those who obviously aren't present, it is particularly in the European wing of the program, it is overwhelmingly white. It's not exclusively, but overwhelmingly white. And for me, witnessing some of your interventions has unlocked a lot of understanding, actually, I think. And yeah, so I partly wanted to thank you for that and just honor that, because there's I've experienced you as showing like real courage, and also, as you say, you've been able to deliver messages. There is I love the word you use, fierceness. Like I've felt your fierceness at times, but I've also been able to receive, I think, quite deeply the message that you were bringing. And as you were speaking, I was getting goosebumps in my whole body. I really was. Like something has, this work has actually allowed me to connect with people of color or black people. And I'm thinking of an experience I had at a retreat, a work meeting just last week, where the conversations I was able to have about feelings of exclusion or power imbalances, or it would have just been completely invisible to me and unavailable, and I wouldn't have been able to be. I would just it would have I would have been completely ignorant, basically. So I know that this work has shifted something in me that has opened me up in a way that I feel like profoundly grateful for. For a very profound gratitude for that. So maybe maybe your father has been more present in TWT in a way than we might assume, in some form. I've felt him like I felt something around you that has been very potent.
That sounds really quite mysterious, almost, what you're pointing to there. Like, is there a sense in which the presence actually can begin to come through the absence, even without like the immediate local connection with that person? Like somehow it's still like something begins to speak through the absence.
Yeah, I mean, that I feel for sure that through this process of our training, like I've been able to connect more with just my ancestry on that side. And yeah, like it just touches me what you said, Matthew, because I think that's a big part of why I have stood up in our group and kind of shared like, hey, there's 5 Black people here in this group of 200 people. It's really tough for us to be here sometimes, because there's just a blindness to the fact that like, the colonialism and enslavement and of Black bodies, like it's difficult for us to step into a majority white space, and white people don't necessarily see that or feel that all the time. And so then we have to hold basically the whole thing, the whole package. And so for me to stand up, it feels like, there's also a sadness that it becomes kind of our duty to bring that in and bring awareness to a person with a white body. But in some way it's also like a reclamation or like a look, this is something we need. And when it's received, like I'm so touched that you said that, Matthew, because like that's really what I was going for in sharing, like this is how difficult it is for me to be in this space and me to be walking around in Germany and in a mostly white place. And it's not so easy on the body, and for other people to understand that and feel that with us, I think is already starting to move and heal, like the ability for us to heal or healing to emerge collectively in this space. Yeah, so just wanted to say that.
I'm thinking first at a cultural level, something I observed as I think as I became more aware of these issues, I started to hear the voice of it more through culture. And Kanye Kanye and Kendrick are obviously like the two biggest Black voices of our time. And I noted that in both of their musical journeys, like they both reached a certain stage where it became quite essential to just like release primordial rage in their music. Like on, I think, Yeezus for Kanye and Pimp a Butterfly for Kendrick Lamar, you both have these tracks where they're just like screaming. And I think this points to the same thing. There's this scream that has like the fucking pressure that's mounted into the bodies has to be released. And it makes sense to me that, you know, having not experienced that trauma in this reality, but having experienced other ones, that even once you've healed something, whatever that thing that you've been very intimate to, you're so sensitized to that reality wherever you go.
Yeah, and another thing I would bring in and say that I have this experience of, you know, being Black and being perceived as Black, but also, you know, my mother's white, so I am also white, and I'm mixed in this way. And I think through my experience of growing up, because I was born and raised for a little bit in California, but then once my mother met my stepfather, we moved to Washington, D.C. area, so East Coast. And there, once I landed in the East Coast, after a couple of years, I started to feel how these different places in the US have such a different cultural landscape or architecture somehow. And on the East Coast, it's very much, or at least when I lived there, it was very much still very segregated in a way that Black people hang out with Black people, white people hang out with white people, and you know, other cultures, Chinese, like all of these people kind of are more in pockets. And of course there is interactions, but I think it on just a friendship level and family level, you kind of stay with your pack more than I saw on the West Coast. And of course this is kind of general, but this is just my experience and how I guess this awareness developed in me of, okay, something's going on here. And to be realizing that I'm kind of in the middle, I'm both of these parties are living in me. And so how do I deal with that? How do I deal with this kind of complexity of us moving to the East Coast, and now we're living in a all Black neighborhood basically, and my mom is now the only white person, and she's actually receiving racism and prejudice against because she's white. And so it's just like I've had interesting experiences like this that, you know, and I think Bayo Akamalefe says this a lot, like, you know, whiteness or Blackness is not necessarily like the color, but like the psychology and the predicament that we've kind of, this colonial mindset basically. And it can happen with anyone, you know. And so I think I've formed awareness through having those experiences, and that's shaped my perspective on just a culture that's wounded in this place of race and color, but that we all are kind of informed by the larger context of colonialism and how that keeps us in a way separate or isolated in our own races and conflict.
I'm curious about how this big, this, monumental cultural story, connects with the story of your father. Like, how, are these themes coming up in your letters, or is it like how does that how does your how do you see the connection between these huge trauma fields that you've been describing, and your father's absence?
Yeah. Yeah, when I sense into my father, I really feel that also his father was, my grandfather was also not there, like physically in the house. Like I feel like that he didn't also have a father and had not much connection to his father. Um, and that feels really true to me, that his experience was a similar thing that he kind of then just perpetuated because that was what was known. Um, and my mom always says this to me, um, that she would ask my father, like, if they spoke on the phone or somehow she contacted him, he would say, okay, when Jaden's turning 16, like I will be in his life, because that's when a boy needs his father to like really show him the ropes and all of that. And of course, like he never did that, but just that sentence that my mom tells me sometimes, I'm just like, that's very interesting perspective on raising a child, you know? So I wonder like where that comes from. And I'm pretty sure that it comes from the lineage, you know, of like the father wasn't there, and yeah, it's not a big deal if you're not there, kind of. And also I feel that there's a true fear of intimacy in, just when I connect to him. And I think this is also for the culture, like culturally speaking, the fear of intimacy for a Black man to really, open that space for a child to really basically open his heart. I think that's scary. And even for me, you know, like I feel that fear in myself of doing the right thing and, you know, being good enough as a father. And I don't think that's just an individual thing. I think that's collectively, because there was so many years where Black men weren't able to have their kids, you know, like they weren't able to like be around them and raise them. And so it's something that we're kind of having to learn over time. And yeah, I think this fear of intimacy is something that's culturally in represented, but also like for my individual piece, I can feel that in myself, and when I connect to my father, um, yeah, this kind of running away from that deep connection.
Feeling more of a sociological question coming up for me. I'm thinking back to the graphs that you sent prior to this, and how it appears like that kind of systematic breakdown of family really didn't come like full force until like the 50s and the 60s, and like increasing upwards into the 70s. And that makes sense to me, that considering like the proximity to the trauma of slavery and so on, like just 100 years before, that maybe there's a kind of latency to that coming in and having effect. But I wonder if there's any if there's like other forces and factors. I wonder if how like spirituality relates to this. I think for me, I'm also thinking about the parallel between the absence of the biological father and the absence of the spiritual father, and how that is kind of a that's kind of a through line of our culture now, as well as like kind of the loss of that sense of being guided, looked over, held, having someone above that we can turn to has fallen away. And how that kind of trickling through culture then might, well, shape the family as well, like a decline in the fabric, not just inside the family, but between all of us also somehow. Trying to get a sense of like a further layer to this that I can't fully see, but I sense maybe there.
Yeah, when you speak, I really, I think the work that we as men are now to do is just to start to feel and sense into the numbness that we've had to place on ourselves over the years. And this is not just Black men, but like, you know, all men that have gone to war, and, you know, like just this numbing that we've had to do for ourselves. And I think there's now some more space for that not to be so much there. And through that we can start to change the way that men are supposed to show up in the world, and like the definition of men, and, you know, all these patriarchal structures then start to fall through that, I think, because like you said at the beginning, Jacob, like when we're numb to our feelings, when we can't feel, then we start to dominate people, we start to put out manipulative tactics and control. And so I think when you speak, I just feel this numbness in myself, and I just am looking forward to seeing how we as a collective can give space for that in men, and what unfolds from those things, I think will be really massive shifts.
I'm feeling, Jaden, that your book will catalyze a movement. But I think it's more than a book. I think it's a movement. And I'm thinking of movement because I'm thinking of body work and your movement practice. But I'm thinking of movement at the meta level, like a movement in a way. Like this isn't just about, like, this is obviously telling a story that needs to be told, but the importance of what you're doing, like the significance to me is, it's coming, like it's really landing in me much more deeply as I've been listening to you, what this work could create, what it could unlock. And we both, I think we all have an interest in like men's work, and we have in the Timeless Wisdom training, we've done some very deep work. And I love that you presence the war. It's been a big theme, you know, particularly in a European dominated group. We've been doing a lot of work on, and Jacob, we've talked about this. In fact, this was a theme that brought us initially together, the frozenness of our ancestors from the First World War, the Second World War, and many other wars. It lives on in us. You know, I think of my granddad. I mean, he was in the First World War. He basically lived in a garden shed, you know, so he was physically there, but as far as I can see, almost entirely absent for my own father. And, you know, the frozenness there is just, you know, solid frozen. And so this thawing, this reconnection, this reignition in a way, something, it's like systems in our bodies that need to come back online, reawaken over generations. We can do it, and we do it together. This is the beauty of the men's work for me, is that we can help each other to do that. We can be the fathers for each other in a way. We can bring that medicine to each other. And that's for me, the real beauty and essence of the men's work is that softening, that defrost, it's the liquefy, as Thomas Hübl says in the Timeless Wisdom training, the kind of liquefaction. Suddenly everything begins to move, and acknowledging like how many men are actually we're actually kind of afraid of one another almost by default, and how big a barrier that is just in the culture on a baseline level. But how we can begin to work with that and transcend that. And we've seen that in our training, and you and I, Jacob, have done a men's group. Like, it just reminds me of how important this is. And I just feel, Jaden, that you're so well positioned to be a leader, and you're already leading, but you could lead in a very significant way. I really feel that's in your field.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you both so much. That those two contributions there really feel like bringing a summation and perhaps a consummation to this dialogue today. And I really appreciate the kind of synthesis that you brought there, Matthew, bringing together what we've spoken about so much and lives in both of us, with this potency and potential for the future, which is really right here before us, and calling for us to hold the space of it, to live into it. And I do feel that with the message that Jaden's bringing and the transmission. So I really look forward to hearing more about this writing as it comes. And just very grateful to be in the company of co-travelers in this journey, and appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jacob and Matthew. It's really touching conversation, and super happy to be here, and grateful for the platform to share about what I'm doing. And yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you both. I'm left with a real excitement around Jaden's work in particular, but our work more broadly on these themes, and a real reminder of what's important. What are we doing here? Like, this is the kind of thing we need to be doing as much as we can. So we're doing it right now in the space. So really appreciate both of you bringing me into this as well. So thank you.